Welcome to Red Flags, the podcast where we spot the green flags, wave the red ones, and occasionally get lost in the footnotes. I'm Yelena, your resident audiobook addict, and joining me is my co-host Sam, a true book reader extraordinaire.
Hey. How is it going, Yelena?
Everything's going well. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
And also Happy Chinese New Year, since we are in February and
Yes.
It's been a little while since we've recorded, but It is
Yes.
our first episode of the year.
This is correct. We had a bit of a break between Christmas and the New Year. I got a little bit sick after the New Year started.
Yep.
And now we are back on deck. I have my voice back and I'm super excited to be here.
We're good to go. But I guess on the New Year's front, did you have any book-related resolutions for this year of 2026?
You know, actually, yes. And you're going to have to bear with me because I'm going to get to it after a bit of a story. I guess this is because it's a topic I've been thinking about, not even for months, probably for years, if I was to be really honest with you. And I first came across the concept because I follow a YouTuber who was formerly an Instagrammer called According to Yelena.
Okay.
And I'll put a link to her bio and also to her YouTube video essays, which are fantastic, by the way. And in one of, maybe it was an Instagram reel or maybe it was a YouTube video, she spoke about this concept called the gamification of literature and the gamification or the commodification of hobbies more broadly. And look, the link that I'm going to send you in the show notes is not directly about that. I hunted for weeks to try to find that exact quote.
Other people can find it.
Hopefully. Someone who's better versed at using the internet than me, please try to find it again, because I couldn't. But I have found one that is closely related. And it was actually about the idea of commodification because of book talk, I should say, sorry, and the similarities that has to fast fashion. And fundamentally, the essay kind of talks about how and why we gamify our hobbies. Like, you know, in the concept of reading, we would have reading challenges, we would have reading goals. And the idea is that you read more and you read faster, right? So there are a lot of videos on how to achieve your reading goals and how to read more books and
read this many in a year.
Correct. And a lot of that can be helpful. I don't want to discount the value of having a personal goal and how that can kind of help you to stay motivated to kind of keep reading and get through reading slumps. But she spoke really eloquently about there being an undercurrent of hustle culture and kind of the bid to make your hobbies more productive. And reading in particular, she was discussing in both of these video essays, reading in particular is more prone to that because reading in some ways can be more than just a hobby. It almost becomes like a virtue itself. Yeah. So people, I think by extension in what she was saying, people can begin to kind of see you as more intelligent, more sophisticated.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
More well-reasoned, and your values and your opinions on topics matter more because you are a seasoned reader, right? But I think the inverse of that, particularly for somebody who, in my case, is suffering from wildly low self-esteem, and I am also a recovering productivity junkie myself, what that can lead to, in my case, was like a preoccupation with how much I was reading. Yeah. And I found myself constantly thinking about how I would hit my reading goal for the year. And I was like, well, if I read X number of books in July, then I would get close to getting that goal in December. And if I'd started to fall behind because I am a human who has a life and work and other hobbies that also interest me, I would then start to think about what I could read in between that might get me back up to my reading goal.
Yeah, because it's a per book goal.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And it very much kind of came to this idea that more automatically meant better. Yeah. And I don't know that that's always true. I think it comes down to what you want to get out of your reading experience. But for me, I think it was partly just because I enjoy reading. Yeah. And it was partly because I wanted to use reading as a way to build my empathy and to learn to broaden my worldview about people who have different life experiences than me. And the idea of consistently trying to churn out book after book after book after book kind of starts to dilute both of those things for me. Yeah. particularly if I'm no longer really reading it with that critical thinking mindset of like, how do I apply this in the context of the world that I'm living in?
Mm-hmm.
That isn't to say everybody needs to, and that isn't to say reading goals are bad, and it doesn't mean that you need to stop trying to gamify your hobbies.
Yeah.
But it meant for me, I reached the point last year where I was like, you know what? I am no longer enjoying this. And that is a problem.
Yeah.
Especially when you're hosting a podcast about books.
Yeah.
And so this year, for the very first year in like decades, I don't have a reading goal, or at least not a quantitative reading goal, not one where I want to read a certain number of books in a year.
What was your reading goal then, like last year? Like, what is like a quantity sort of thing for you?
Oh, look, because I have quite a full life, I generally aim to read anywhere from like 25 to 35 books a year, which is really not a lot.
Yeah.
And if you look at most book talk influencers,
some people do like hundreds and
hundreds and hundreds of books. But also influencers, their full-time job is to read.
True.
And for a while, I remember thinking, it's okay, I have other hobbies. And that's why if I can get a book every couple of weeks or a book a week, I've done well. And I started to realize how damaging that was to my experience of actually reading. And the likelihood of me picking up a book that I don't even really care about because, well, it's short, I'll be able to keep reading and then I'll have another book on my list.
Yeah.
And that mindset started to feel a little bit unhealthy for me.
Yeah. Because, I mean, I guess with any hobby, that if you do something and if you're trying to hit other goals other than just the enjoyment of it, you start to lose the enjoyment. It's the same as like when I think they say if you, which because I don't agree with this, if you do a job that like was something that you enjoy and that is your hobby,
you'll never work a day.
You never work a day in your life, and it's an absolute lie because work is work. Work is tiring, and any of these things, especially in the modern world, with how you have to present yourself, is everything. There's a lot happening, and everything's in front of you, and you're in front of everyone. And yeah, it makes it not fun or enjoyable anymore.
Correct. So for some people, it might still work. For me, I thought, you know what? Doesn't matter if I read one book or 4 or 10 or 30 or 100. What I wanted to focus on is what was my goal, my overarching objectives for reading in the first place. And that was, hey, I want to learn more about people and I want to enjoy learning more about people and things. And for me, that meant reading more diverse voices.
Okay, cool.
And I can think I have a tendency of always picking up books that are in a really familiar setting to me or by authors who are in a really similar socioeconomic background. But over the past couple months since the new year started, I've picked a book that was set in Singapore, which was really interesting. I'm currently reading a book, it's called The Covenant of Water, that is set in Kerala in India. And I found that really, really interesting. It's a long book, so it'll take me a while, and that's a good thing. And yeah, I'm hopeful that I will keep trying to pick books that interest me and broaden my reading horizons beyond just, I want another number.
Yeah. Okay, well, I think that's a very admirable goal.
Thank you.
I think that's great.
You.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening. So what about yourself? Any reading goals or resolutions?
Yeah, so I guess mine kind of technically is the opposite of yours. With not with like the amount that I want to read, but with like I want to read certain things. So and now we will tell our listeners, I am starting to write a novel.
Yes, you are.
Of my own. And we'll leave it as I like to write smut because I like to read smut, and it is a werewolf-based one, and we'll leave it at that because it's still in its development. But I've got a few ideas that I'd like to write some things about, and so I'm delving into the indie author community and how you'd go through self-publishing. But because I'm not, as you say, as much of a seasoned reader, and I also listen to a lot of audiobooks versus reading. As I've been trying to write something, I've realized I do have a little bit of a, not even if it's a lack of knowledge in things, it's I'm not sure how I want my writing to be and like finding that voice. Like the very first thing was I started writing in third person and realized I actually want to be a first person writer, and that's just a preference for anyone on what they like to read and what they like to do. But even with I've gone back to books like audiobooks that I've listened to and other books that have been like gifted to me in like the same sort of genres. And I'm like, okay, why do I like this? Or how is this book you know, starting up, because what we currently review is we review anything, and it's not in like that sort of more specific niche. But because I'm writing that, I'm like, I think I need to work out what I like in these things and how I want to present my stuff. And I don't expect it to be a grand book of anything for my very first book, but I'm trying to diversify myself in what I'm reading, what I like, and how I want to construct my own sort of literature.
So I quite like that because while I'm saying I want to broaden what I want to read and read from a variety of different authors and settings and places, what you're saying is I want to narrow in on a specific genre, but then broaden the way, like, or diversify the types of authors that I read who specialize in this space, so I can learn what my voice is and what I prefer out of it.
Yeah,
That's cool.
and because like so we got we did Chris Kringle with people, and I won the lovely book called Coming Down Her Chimney, which
I remember that.
people, if you can think of the title, you can imagine what it is. It's very much we're
very
just
self-explanatory
we're
book.
just here for the smut, and that's about it, and that's fine. And so I read that, and I'm like, and it was a fine read and everything, and it was just kind of like funny in certain ways, but there are other books where if like you read something that's big, like Fourth Wing or Akatar, and you go, there's a bit of smut in there, but there's a huge amount of fantasy in it. And I'm also writing in the realm of like fantasy, fae and stuff as well. And I'm like, okay, where do I want to sit in some of these? Because I've got more than just one book idea. I've got like other ideas. I'm like, where do they sit in this? And how do I want my writing to be? Because I know there are people that actually hate the writing style of like Akatar and that. I personally find it fine. And so it's just working out how I want to present myself. And then I've been listening to a podcast you suggested to me, Start With This.
We'll link in our show notes.
Yeah, and it's very good. It's actually about how to start your own podcast, which is kind of ironic because I'm not listening to it about that. But they're a storytelling podcast, and they do a full storytelling thing separately. But it's got some relevant stuff for writing and like writing tasks and just things where it's like I've done my first draft of my book, and a few of you have got it and are going to read it, and like I've already started reading through it, going through, okay, I can see problems with it already, but it's also just getting things out there and going, it's not going to be perfect, and you need the reviews and like the criticisms and whatever to work out where you're going to go with it. So sometimes it's just do something and put it out there and see what happens, you know. Fear of failure, like going against that, which I definitely have fear of failure in many things. I've achieved some very cool things in my life, but I also am like, if I know I'm going to fail at it, I don't want to do it.
Yeah,
you know?
Fair enough. But that's, you know, that's the writer's journey, right? How do you grapple with self-doubt? How do you grapple with fear that other people won't like what you're putting out there, and how do you go ahead with it anyway?
With us doing this podcast, I already know that there are people that aren't going to like it, and it's the same as I don't like certain things that we've read or done, and I'm like, not everyone's going to like it. Not everyone. Some people might think I'm crazy for what I've written, whereas other people are like, yeah, like that's amazing.
This.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, you know what? It's not going to be everyone's cup of tea. Just like certain books aren't mine, and you just got to put yourself out there. So that is my journey of 2026 with everything else that I do in my life.
The reader's journey and the writer's journey.
Yeah,
Love
exactly. Exactly. Okay, Sam, so we should get into the book of this episode. And I would like you to explain to our listeners, why did we even pick this book?
So we had quite a journey to get to this book. Initially, I selected this book because it was Christmas time, and we wanted a light book for the pod to end the year. And there was a person whose recommendations I really trust and who has a similar reading taste or style to myself, at least. And she suggested that we read The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy by Brigitte Knightley. And unsurprisingly, we are now in February when this episode is being prepared, let alone released. Clearly life got in the way and some stuff happened, including me destroying a brand new library book.
You did.
And then paying for it.
Yeah, absolutely brand new. I don't know if you were the first person.
I was the first person who borrowed it.
Yep, and then you had to go in and shamefully pay for the book. And now you have a copy of the book for yourself.
Correct. At your former workplace, mind you.
Yes, so it's very funny explaining that to people because I still know the people there.
Correct.
Which, you know what, on a level of if you accidentally destroy a library book, it's fine, people. It's not the end of the world. It's just sad when it's the very first borrow.
Yeah. I felt mildly judged, and rightfully so.
Yeah.
But the reason I say it was quite a journey for us to get here, apart from the fact that I destroyed the book in the process, was because for a while there, we were unsure whether we would even continue with the book, largely because it felt like, and there's a bit of a spoiler, that there was a fair few pacing issues and
Yes.
a lot didn't happen for huge chunks of the book itself.
Yeah, you started reading it and you'd immediately was like, oh, I don't think you're going to like this.
Yeah.
I started listening to it and the first chapter was about 45 minutes, which is a long first chapter.
Yes.
And I found it very, very boring. And like we could have cut a lot out. But through my personal take throughout the whole thing is I was really bored and struggling to pay attention, and I don't normally struggle with an audiobook to pay attention.
Fair enough.
To the point where I wasn't remembering the main characters' names, which was a huge problem.
Just as a sidebar for our listeners, we currently have a whiteboard where we've put all the main characters' names up there so that we don't forget them.
And there's not many. Normally we have it there because there's so many characters. This is just because we couldn't remember them, which is a bit of a problem. But you also were quite bored, and I'd finished the book before you because you'd gone away, so different timing. But as I'd finished it, I was like, oh, God.
It's a struggle to get
to
the
me,
end.
I was like, I don't think it gets any better. And you were, I think, 3/4 of the way through, and you're like sending me messages being like, Yelena, I don't think I can get through this, and I don't know if we should do this book.
I don't know that I have enough to talk about for an hour-long podcast.
And we had a good discussion on should we even do this book. And ultimately, for me, I was like, even if we don't like a book, though, it doesn't mean we shouldn't review it, because that's what this podcast is about, so we should. And
by the time I got to the end, our experiences diverged dramatically, and I ended up really gelling with the ending, and I thought it was quite cleverly done.
Yeah.
And I guess that kind of comes back to this idea that, hey, we're not always doing this because we want people to like the episode or to agree with us, but rather because we want to try to take an objective, unbiased approach as much as we possibly can to the reading and the reading experience. And isn't that the point of even things like book clubs, right? Like we go there to learn as much as we're going there to have things to talk about.
Yeah.
And there's a lot that this book teaches us, I think, about writing, the writing experience.
Yeah, it's ended up being a much more conversational piece than I thought it would be, and I'm very glad we are still doing it.
Yes.
And I won't spoil anything yet, but we both went on a journey with this book.
And for that, props to my mate for recommending it, and props to you for saying, you know what, even if we don't have a lot to talk about,
we're doing it anyway.
We're doing it anyway.
You destroyed a book. We have to do
this. The stakes are too high.
Yeah, the book gods are like, you cannot not do this now.
So, Yelena, I know that you really struggled with this book.
Yes.
And as you pointed out, you don't typically struggle with audiobooks, and that you typically don't find them so dull. So my question to you is, does your perspective of this book change if I were to tell you that this book was written by a debut author?
Interesting. Okay, so 100% on a personal level, it does, because as, someone writing their own book currently, if doing your first book, it's going to not be the same as like your 20th book. And so for anyone putting something out there into the world and putting their like heart and soul into it and being like, this is the first thing that I've done, it changes. Like it'll change how I see the book, but it doesn't change how we rate the book with our rating system.
Okay.
Because I think, and I won't spoil what happens at the end of this episode, but I think this is a really good example of why our rating system works and how we choose our little rating segments, and that it removes some of the biases we have, because
it depersonalizes it a bit.
It does, because I already know there are going to be certain books that aren't personally my thing, just like I know a bunch of the books I read aren't probably going to be your thing, right? And if we review one of them, I'm like, I know you're not going to be into this as much as I am, where I'll be in love with it. But I think it helps keep everything sort of neutral. And I don't think it's fair for us to, for instance, go, this person's a seasoned author, so we're going to judge them a lot more harshly than someone who's put something out that's new. Because you can have a seasoned author that's also never changed their writing style or anything, and we could still go, to me, it hasn't changed.
Book 20 is no better than book 1.
Exactly. And we don't just review novels or like published works. We are here to review any kind of literature.
Yeah.
We could review a webtoon or something on the internet and people would be like, oh, but that's different. I go, no, we should keep everything the same because it keeps it fair.
Yeah. So I really like that you brought up online discourse. Does your perspective of this book change if I were to now tell you that not only is this a debut author, but that this author found her roots or started her writing journey writing fan fiction.
Yeah.
And that specifically this book is based off of a 199,000 word fan fiction called Draco Malfoy and the Mortifying Ordeal of Being in Love. Harry Potter fan fiction, at least in its origin, based on a Draco and Hermione love pairing.
Yeah. Yeah, it does change it because you've got someone who has, on a personal level it does, but you've got someone who has put their heart and soul into what you said, 199,000 words, which is a lot of words to put out there. It's a big...
In a fan fiction, definitely.
Yeah. And to put it out there into the world, to be like, this is my thing. And now it's being developed into an actual published work. And that's their journey of going from, I've just written something on fan fiction to I'm publishing a book. So of course, feel like not even with me writing something, it's just, an achievement for someone being like, yeah, I'm going to have a different opinion of it. Even with the writing style, it's like, okay, I can see maybe where some of the fan fiction stuff comes through. And on a personal level, I'm going to accept it a bit more. But for us doing the podcast, maybe not. And so if I was to recommend this book to someone, there'd definitely be people I wouldn't recommend it to. But maybe now I would recommend it to certain other people, sort of knowing where it sort of comes from.
Knowing its origins.
Exactly.
So if I were to play that back, is it fair to say then that on a personal note, you're able to give some grace to Brigitte Knightley, is a pseudonym, by the way. We don't know what her actual name is, but you're able to give her some grace because you recognize that the form and the medium by which she was writing was picking established characters and established worlds and building on those worlds. And that trying to shift that and take that concept into a completely new world can be hard and can be different.
Oh, it is.
And
like I've got some story ideas that are inspired by other things, and the idea of having to shift that into your own work is difficult.
Hard.
Like you can go 80% of this is different, but also if it's based off of a world that's already established by someone, you can't just copy someone's work.
Correct.
And so I'll spoil for people about how she even got this, because this book has just suddenly shown up on the shelves.
It has.
And it's got beautiful cover work. It's formatted fantastically. It's a beautiful piece where you're like, oh, this must be from an established author. And it's not. And it's because just one day, inbox, she got a message from a publisher or multiple publishers. I don't exactly know that. But it just says we want to publish this into an actual book. And you sort of go, hell yeah.
Good for you.
You go, girl. Like, take that and take
the opportunity, run with it, learn from it, keep
building.
building.
Feeling it must be to have been making this fan fiction. You've got a fan base.
Pouring your love into it.
You don't expect it to go anywhere. And publishers are like, we want this.
Yeah.
We want to pay you. We want to do this. However, the whole actually officially publishing thing works, I'm not sure. But, congratulations to her. And it's such an amazing sort of thing. And on a personal level, I'm like, this is great. Keep running with it.
But from the podcast perspective, you would not award her many more points in her favor or away from her favor.
No.
Because she had a more, I guess, unorthodox origin story.
Yeah, correct. Because, you can look at it with the indie authors. A lot of the stuff that people have written as an indie author, because they don't go through traditional publishing, you're dealing with everything, like financing everything yourself, finding your own time to do it, like working full time probably, trying to find time to make your novel, and then you've got to pay for, if you don't know how to do cover art, you got to pay for an editor if you want an editor. There's formatting and where are you going to publish it through, and if you want.
And a lot of established authors have those same challenges too.
Yeah, exactly. So
you can't really treat her any differently.
No, and so sometimes when you're consuming a medium, like any kind of like art form medium, and I classify writing as a sort of art form, is you have to remember people are human at the same time. At the end of the day, and we all have our lives that we've got to live. And so nothing's ever going to be perfect for everyone, or there's going to be mistakes that happen because, we're learning, we're developing, and all that kind of stuff.
Very fair. Well, look, this particular book has been, I would say, a little lower rated than the others that we've done so far.
Yes.
Goodreads rated this book 3.8 out of 5.
Yeah, so it is probably the lowest one, I think,
so far.
Yeah. But Audible actually rated it quite high. So overall was a 4.3 out of 5. Only 15 ratings though. So this is where I like to add that in because Audible has a lot less ratings. So performance, so for the narrators, it was 4.6 out of 5 in performance. And then the story got a 4.2 out of 5.
Interesting. So it's clear to say that I think other consumers of this book have also identified areas for improvement.
Yes.
And those are the things we're going to talk about next. But before we get into that, let's talk trigger warnings. Now, this book on the whole, at least compared to the other two that we've done so far, has taken a more humorous approach in terms of writing style. And as a consequence of it, I would say that a lot of the topics that are discussed are somewhat sanitized, or at least placed in a humorous context.
Yeah, it's not heavy.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it necessarily heavy, but nevertheless, that's my personal opinion. And I am completely cognizant of the fact that other people may find these topics triggering. So if you do not want to read about or hear about illness, specifically the plague, death or murder and death of children, medical procedures, somewhat sanitized violence, torture, and sexual content, now is your time to hit pause, go away, enjoy life, come back and listen to one of our other episodes if you'd like, and we will keep going. Now, Yelena, I normally ask you for a 2-sentence summary of the book.
Yep.
Do you have one for me?
I do, and I didn't have to do any work for this.
Love that.
Because the author already did it for me, but Irresistible Bastard meets Immovable Bitch, which is the chapter 1 title.
Exquisite.
And all the chapter titles are actually fantastic for this book.
On to a quick book summary. This book is set in an alternative version of the United Kingdom, where the United Kingdom did not become unified. Instead, we have several tiendoms, which are really petty kingdoms, which coexist, and not necessarily peacefully at that, with different rulers in charge of each tiendom. Osric, our male protagonist, our male lead, is a member of the Haelan Order, which is an order of assassins who are trained in a skill called shadow walking. In other words, he's a paid for hire, effectively. He, at the start of the book, breaks into a medical facility to seek assistance to cure an incurable disease called saith rot, which is where a magic user's veins begin to deteriorate due to blockages in their magic channel, their saith channel. The only known treatment is to remove the channels altogether, but that would render him effectively powerless and unable to use his saith to generate magic going forward. And once he is no longer of use to the Haelan Order, he will be executed due to the amount of knowledge that he has about the Haelan Order's personal illicit dealings. Therefore, he is trying to seek a miracle cure from one of the most powerful scholars of the Haelan Order, who specializes specifically in treating saith issues. Aurienne, our female lead, is deeply displeased, though, at the prospect of treating someone whose sole occupation is to hurt and maim others. It goes against the Haelan Order's fundamental premise, I should say, around harm to none. Eventually, they reach a quid pro quo. she will research and attempt to cure his Saithroth, even if that means relying on fables and mythology to research potential solutions, in return for him anonymously donating a sizable sum of money to her clinic, which is currently battling waves and waves of pox disease, which has recently begun to affect children.
Yes. And so every month during a full moon specifically, both Osric and Aurienne meet at different fantastical destinations across the land and try new different tactics to heal Osric's condition based off of actual
Anything.
sort of science or law or anything that they can find.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of time skipping between this because it's every month. Meanwhile, as a reader, we learn more about the different orders, the mystery behind the pox, and
Why it affects children in particular.
yeah, and also just a bit more about the two characters as individuals and how they act together. A bunch of different shenanigans ensue throughout this whole book. Quite funny and lighthearted.
Mm-hmm.
It is very humorous in different areas, but there are some serious things with like near-death encounters. And through the middle of the book, it becomes pretty clear that there is someone rich and powerful that is targeting the Haelan Order.
Correct. So by the end of the book, Aurienne is invited to one of the tiendom lords' fortified castle, heavily fortified castle, under the pretense of curing that lord. His name is Lord Wellesley's daughter. Osric accompanies her disguised as a guard, in part to protect her and in part because he is following a lead which suggests that a specific tiendom in particular is involved in targeting the Haelans. But once he is there, he finds several bottles of the pox disease disguised in wine and beverage
alcohol
bottles. He's also forced into a situation where he has to kill Lord Wellesley because Lord Wellesley in turn had threatened Aurienne's life unless she revealed who the anonymous donor to the Haelan Order was. Aurienne and Osric then realize that the tiendoms themselves are deliberately infecting children with the pox in order to effectively convert them into these almost undead creatures capable of being in their army.
Yeah.
And Osric nearly loses his life trying to save Aurienne from yet another attack on the Haelan. Problematically this time, he is forced to kill a member of his own order, the Haelan Order, because they were paid to attack the Haelans for attempting to find a cure for the pox. Aurienne, as I mentioned earlier, theorizes that the pox was being used to create an army of Drior, which are these near-extinct order of Death Knights, and that some of the tiendoms intend to start a war. Meanwhile, after several days of recovery at Aurienne's family home, Osric is finally well enough to return to work, but he learns at one of the closing chapters of the book that the head of his order, a ruthless French executioner called Tristane, is now investigating the death of one of her people and has decided to finish his last job and take down the Haelan herself. So that's our very quick plot summary. Apologies belatedly to anyone that we spoiled this to. But Yelena, talk to me. How did you find the audio experience?
So I didn't find it that great. And there are some reasons where it was just the general audio experience and things we discovered afterwards. But so one of the big ones was I found I was going into it very blind and there was a lot of things that I wasn't understanding from the very first chapter. Yeah.
Like, could you give me an example?
So the Saithroth.
Yes.
Because Osric was, like, at the beginning of the book is described as you sort of go, oh, he's some sort of assassin or, hire for kill. You go, okay, he steals, he's a thief or something like that. And they kept saying safe. And I thought he had a safe of money.
Right.
I didn't realize it was like a biological thing in his system for like magic.
Wait, hang on. Does that mean that you didn't have the glossary at the start of the book and you didn't have the explanation of the bright path and the dusken path and what the different orders are?
Correct.
Oh.
So once I saw your physical book the other day, I realized, so the audiobook gives you a very minimal amount of the glossary, but at the end. So it goes
At the end of the book.
At the end of the book. So it goes straight in. And it doesn't even have everything that is there. So like you've got everything about the tiendoms. You've got a map of stuff. So I didn't know where everything was. I just had to make it up in my head. You had just explanation.
Diagrams of the different paths.
Pronunciations on how to say safe and all of that. And what a warden is and things like that. And so I got a little bit confused, especially in the first chapter, because nothing was established yet because I didn't have that information. Which part of me wonders if because it's an audiobook and you have audio samples, whether they're like, well, we can't put that at the beginning because the audio sample then would just be that and not the actual book. So I understand why it's probably not there, but then it didn't have all the information at the end either. So it was kind of like, so
you're going in blind, really.
Yeah, I went in blind, so it was a bit confusing. And anything that was peppered into the book about explaining the things, I don't think was necessarily
detailed
enough. Or at least wasn't enough near the beginning of the book. And then you're like, oh, I'm starting to get it. But it was a bit of a struggle for me. On terms of like the actual audio stuff, so we've got Heather Long and Thomas Judd who did the audios, but it wasn't a true duet.
Right. Okay.
So each chapter, one is from it's either from Aurienne's point of view or Osric's point of view.
That's good.
And in a true sort of duet, they will still voice themselves even in the other person's chapter.
So if it's in Aurienne's point of view, the alternative voice actor would have voiced
Osric. However, in this case, it's not a true duet. So each chapter is purely voiced by the one voice actor. And I'm sure there is a cost thing associated with that. But so it meant Aurienne in her chapters when Osric was there would speak for Osric and the same for
Aurienne
for Osric. And the unfortunate thing that can happen with that is they, as voice actors, can take two different takes on how their personalities are. And I did think that showed in this. So the personalities weren't consistent. And I don't know why, but I found the two main characters not very compelling. And you might think, oh, is it just the voice actors? They're not very good. And I go, no, it's not that, because we have other characters like the Deafolds, which for what people not knowing is kind of, think of it sort of like a spirit
or a familiar.
And it's how they communicate to each other. And they were sassy. They had personality in which it did come through in the audio. Like the voice actors put that inflection on, but the main characters just didn't get as much of that. So they just seemed a little bit
flat.
Which was unfortunate. So that really didn't help in the audio experience. But so I guess there were a couple different things for me that didn't work, but I guess for you, the written experience, how'd that go?
It was very different. Obviously I must have found some issues with her writing if I felt that we may not even need to record a podcast episode on it. But to be honest with you, caveats aside, I genuinely really enjoyed her writing style. She is witty. She is funny. And I personally haven't come across a lot of romanticises that have made me genuinely laugh out loud. And it's different to anything else I've read in this genre.
Yeah, as much as, and I have obviously stated I did find this boring, there were moments, and the chapter titles, I'm like, brilliant. And there were little things. They had, some bad guys, and one was called Dandruff, and the other was called like Scratch and Sniff. And you're just like, okay, that's kind of funny. It's a little bit silly. And there's like, a line where Osric is contemplating killing someone and he's just like, he thought of 26 ways to kill him only using the potato. And I'm like, it's funny. Like, it's low-level humor, but it's humorous. And I was like, oh, there are some good things in there.
She's got a really engaging writing style. I really liked it.
Yeah, so I can agree with that. Just other things kind of
And it made up for any, I guess, pacing issues or lacking in the plot.
For you, maybe. For me, not.
That's true. That's true. So, Yelena, it sounds to me, just from what you've said so far, that you struggled to get a sense of time and place and setting, really, in this novel.
Yeah.
before we kind of talk about why that was, I do want to start with world building more broadly. Were there elements or components of her world building style that you liked? Choices that she made that you resonated with?
Oh, for sure. Like there's a lot of things that are actually quite nice in this
And
book
well
when
done.
and well done when you look into it. Like the so the Tarkans are their like I guess I'm gonna call it like a tattoo symbol that's on their hands.
Mhm.
And it's how I guess they channel some of their power and how
Yes,
they use the waystone sort of system to
correct.
get from place to place, and also how they basically, it's kind of like swapping phone numbers with people. Like they can connect to each other, and then through that they have a connection, and that's where the deifolds come in. And
Those
there's
familiars.
yeah, and so they're like sort of familiar thing, which isn't necessarily sentient. It's technically a part of them and
An extension of
yeah, it
themselves.
manifests in a way, and then it has its own personality. But it's how they then communicate to each other because they send their deifolds through this connection that they've made with their Tarkans, and it's something that I don't think we've necessarily seen, at least in recent sort of like romantasy
Yeah.
literature.
Actually, look, I'm glad you say that because I really liked the use of takens, these symbols on your palm,
Mm,
as a means of creating a connection with another person at a time and place of your choosing, using these familiars called deifolds.
yeah.
Recently in literature, I don't know if this is fair to say or whether this is just me having a
Mm-hmm.
personal vent about it.
Yep.
I felt like romanticises have begun to rely quite heavily on mind reading bonds.
Yep.
And personally, I felt that to be quite, firstly, it's overdone.
Mm-hmm.
But secondly, it feels a bit lazy and a bit
Yeah.
too convenient. You almost always really know what the other person thinks. You no
Yes.
longer need to grapple with the uncertainty of
Mm-hmm.
what is this other person thinking about me and about the choices that I'm making.
Yeah.
You know it immediately.
Yeah, like, I think it can be used in a nice way, as like, I think the issue is there needs to be some sort of restriction on it where it's like, it's not an open gate the whole time between people, and that, like, because there's got to be circumstances where it's like, no, that makes sense that this is here. But in other ones, you are correct. It is used very frequently
And
now.
it's used quite liberally because even where there are these gates to prevent a person from reading someone's
Hmm.
mind, they're barely used. And then it kind
Yeah.
of cuts the conflict or the interpersonal conflict that you would otherwise have to grapple
Yeah,
with.
and in this book, it actually creates a lot of tension because there are a lot of times where like they'll each like send a deifold to each other to go send a message, and then the other one doesn't answer or let them
Correct.
through for whatever
Correct.
reasons that they can't, and there's that
And there's a
tension.
genuine plot consequence for that, right?
Yes.
So I thought that it was really clever to firstly create this concept of a familiar and use them in this way.
Yeah.
But secondly, keep that distance between the two lead characters, the
Mm-hmm.
two,
Mm-hmm.
characters who are supposed to fall in love with each other. I thought it was clever. I thought it was different. I also agree with you that the taken being a way for you to use these portals, these waystones
Yeah.
to open up to different locations is really clever as well.
Yeah, and because they're only in certain areas, it's
They're
not like
actually only in
it,
pubs, in
yeah,
different pubs across the
they're not
country.
everywhere, and it did take me a little bit to grasp until I actually saw the
Saw the
map,
map.
where
Mm.
it's like, oh no, it is pretty restrictive, and then I didn't realize you're also going maybe slightly into enemy-ish territory
Correct.
for it,
Correct.
which now makes it a bit more impactful, where it's like, okay, so you have to be careful with what you're doing this with
Yes.
as well.
Correct. Because you will need to strategically pick which waystone you go to.
Yeah.
And even when you pick a waystone, there still might be a bit of distance that you have to traverse to be able to get to your location.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was really nicely done.
It sort of like lends to that there's actually some really nice consequences in this
Yeah.
whole book. Like
Yeah.
there really is. And my favorite one is the safe use, because obviously you have magic. We have a lot of books that are like, hey, we have magic, and it's like, we've got unlimited magic, or you just get tired or something. But there is
Unfettered power.
yeah, but there is actually consequences to using your safe, and it's physical, and each person is different. Like Aurienne gets her skin on her hand
Starts
start to
to
like
tear
shed.
off.
Yeah,
And
and
bleed.
there's a point where they can deplete themselves so much that they like pass out, or they could die
Yeah.
actually. So
Yeah.
there is this sort of thing of, you have to be careful with what you're using it for as well.
And
Like,
how much you're using it.
yep, and it technically is slowly killing you.
Yeah.
Really, that is the consequence of it. If you use this thing, it is going to slowly kill you faster than if you never used it.
Or at least it'll increase your risk of getting, say, throat, right?
Yes. Yeah. So it's quite a nice thing to go. Every decision you make when you use these things or if you
Matters.
waste it, because even Aurienne's like, I'm going to use actual medical tools to do scans on Osric rather than her using her safe to do it quickly because it's a waste of safe. Now, she does also kind of lend to be like, I'm not going to waste my safe on you.
Because you're a fire.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
hate fire.
But also it's like she wants to save that to maybe save a child from like who's got the plague going around.
Correct.
So I really like that aspect of this book.
There's a restraint in the way in which they use their magic and their magical powers, which means the world doesn't feel completely unbound. There's certain, I guess, rules that bound what you can do in this world, what you can't, when and where and why.
Yeah.
Now, it's interesting because there are worlds where I think there is more unfettered magic. Things like Harry Potter come to mind, as long as you've got a wand, really. Lord of the Rings certainly has characters that have some unfettered power. But I think this is also a good time to talk about what those books do better than this book. And I think that what they do far better on a very, very different tangential vein is that they introduce their worlds significantly better than this book does. You don't feel this sense of being unmoored and completely baffled by the events that are happening. Because even though I had the glossary available to me, I still felt at the start like I had no idea what I was reading and what was going on in this world.
Yeah.
I wonder if part of that is because in both Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, you have characters that are new to the world itself. So obviously Harry doesn't belong to the magical community from birth. He's had some time away, and so we as a reader learn alongside him.
Yes.
And the hobbits similarly, they're rather sheltered.
So
they don't really know what's happening in the world either. So we kind of learn together. But here we're thrown straight into two characters in already well-established worlds who are already busy doing things, and I don't know about you, but I certainly spent almost the first half of the book not really knowing what was going on.
Yeah, I found it very confusing. And also, so the current book that I am writing is a very similar circumstance where it's an established world. And it is very hard to get that information across without plastering it to a reader. So I can see,
like, to reveal it slowly over time.
So I can see like how it's difficult just to write. Also, I could see the next level on this is because it was a Harry Potter fan fiction. Originally, you have a fandom that knows the lore, and you've now got to change the lore as well as then keep it similar enough, but then also make sure people have the information. And it's a huge undertaking to get that across. And I'm sure there are ways to do it. I don't actually personally know how you would do it though. But
it's interesting you mentioned that because I came across a blog, which I will also post in the show notes below, which pointed out this exact point that fan fictions traditionally present information as if the reader should already be familiar with everything and everyone that's in that world. And that's because they're picking an established world. So then going from an established world to something that is completely new takes a different type of skill. I don't think it's necessarily executed as well as it could have in this book.
Correct.
Having said that, the same blog goes on to say that that particular blog poster didn't actually come to this book to have an exceptionally rich world or to have really intricate plots. They just wanted a really good enemies to lover rom-com, right? And one that was addictive and made them want to keep reading, and that this satisfied their craving. So I think there's some merit to the discussion that not everything needs to be a Tolkien-style fleshed out book.
100%.
But I'd like to think there should be a bit of a balance where you don't spend so much of the first half of the book completely unmoored.
Yeah, correct.
And that, I think, is a really nice segue to some of the themes and ideas of this book, because I think the chief concept or trope that we're running with in this story is, once again, an enemies to lovers narrative. So Yelena, I know you had strong views about our debut episode, which is
Mm-hmm.
also an enemies to lovers story. Great Big Beautiful Life. For those who don't know, go back, find episode 1 and give it a listen. Do you feel like this book presented a better example of an enemies to lovers trope?
I think it only just did. So I really didn't find this much of an enemies to lovers romance, even though it is supposed to be. I think that the enemy side isn't personal enough. I think it's too surface level because they're enemies because, they're part of two different orders, and those two particular orders are complete opposites of each other. One's like, we kill people, one's we save people.
Mm.
And so I didn't find that on a personal level, they were enemies enough for the arc to work well enough on this one.
Right. I mean, so I see where you're coming from. I do agree that there really wasn't a big personal stake, but I give her a little bit more grace on this one because I felt that she tried to build that up. It just perhaps happened a bit too late in the story. So the first of which is, as a character, Aurienne does start to learn that the fact that one person kills and another person saves has so much more depth and nuance to it than just he is a bad person who is part of a bad order.
Yeah.
And it has a lot more to do with the circumstances that people find themselves in, right? It happens quite late in the story, though.
Yes.
And similarly, the only real personal stake that we start to learn about Aurienne is that she is reluctant to fall deeply in love with someone because she has had a kind of former love interest that didn't work very well with a character called Amagus.
Yeah.
But I'm fairly sure he's mentioned for one sentence in this book, and that too would be the denouement of the story, really, around the last 2 or 3 or 4 chapters.
Yeah, I think and we'll get into this in a second, like there are definitely pacing issues which could fix a lot of this, but I think we also don't get enough of how other characters see our main characters, because our main characters don't actually spend a lot of time together because it's, each month on the full moon and then they get together and they might have a little bit of conversation through the day of faults. They might meet up with each other for an hour or so to do something. But a lot of the book is them apart for quite a majority of at least the beginning to middle. And so when you've got things that are supposed to happen, be like, okay, like they don't like each other, but they're starting to get attracted to each other, you really don't get that, because I understand who the characters are supposed to be. Like Osric is supposed to be this kind of, sexy, flirtatious kind of guy that can get his way through things. But I don't think we see that enough from the other characters that interact with them.
To validate the perspective.
Yeah, to validate it. And then we don't get enough of when we've just got a chapter with Aurienne of things building up a little bit to be like, oh, maybe she's starting to like him or he's starting to like her. I didn't feel it was strong enough either in their enemies enough, or that the growth of their relationship
was clear enough.
Yeah.
See, I think that's interesting because I think it might be that there's 2 tropes that she kind of tries to grapple with to varying degrees of success. So we've spoken a bit about the enemies to lovers, but in my mind, the second trope that you're kind of talking about here is forced proximity.
Yeah.
So ordinarily, the consequences of a forced proximity trope is that you've got 2 characters that are forced to spend time with each other because in this case, they've got this quid pro quo agreement. But because of that forced proximity, you don't usually get a lot of perspectives from other characters.
Yeah.
I think the challenge, though, is if it was a real forced proximity, they'd be spending a lot more time together.
Correct.
So they spend more time apart than they do together, and yet we don't really see how other characters perceive each other.
Yes.
So Osric, and in his faction, how his people may perceive Aurienne from her faction about how they perceive Osric, in order to be able to validate that how Aurienne's perspective on Osric is sensible or grounded in any kind of reality.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's a very fair criticism of this book. If we don't see how other characters interact with Osric from other factions, we have no basis to judge whether Aurienne's dislike of him is grounded in anything more than, as you say, a surface level tension.
Yeah, because they still interact with each other, and you'd sort of think, oh, if they really hate each other, there'd be a lot more seething and loathing of them. And it's just kind of no, I don't like you because you kill people and you have
Bit
this
of a
thing.
bastard.
And it's kind of like that. And then we sort of lead into things where we could pepper in them like liking each other. And so this sort of goes maybe a little bit more into a bit of pacing, and something I'm going to bring up, which I did very much enjoy about this, and I thought was really, really quite funny, is so Osric is this horrible person, kills people, but the one thing that he does, and they could have really gone with this more, is anytime he's killed someone, he takes in their animal or their pet, and he's got all of these dogs that he's taken in because he's like, well, I'm not going to leave the dog homeless and to die. So he brings them all in.
Yeah.
And this is where some humor comes in, and I'm going to say it because I love it. But so they're all named after how the owner died.
Yeah.
So we have rigor mortis.
Yep.
Arson.
Yep.
Perjury. Forgery. Outraging public decency.
Indecency,
Sorry, maybe it's supposed to be indecency. High treason, diverse felonies, and creme brulee, because that was the murder weapon he used somehow to kill this person. But it's this weird sort of like thing that humanizes him a little, that he's like, yeah, I'll kill all these people, but the dogs, I've got to save the dogs. And he makes Aurienne take on a kitten that they saved from somewhere. And she now has this kitten. And we have moments where Aurienne's on her own and like the, cat's doing cat things, messing things up in her place. And I was like, that was a really good opportunity to give her a reminder of Osric and be like,
to use it as a symbol. Or a tool.
He's a bad guy, or he's just killed someone, or I'm mad at him for doing this, or frustrated that he keeps assassinating people. But seeing this kitten, this little innocent thing that's been saved because of him.
Yeah.
It's just like, I felt like we could have had more moments like that to sort of start bridging that, like the
gap and the disconnect
gap, because I just felt like it went from, we kind of know each other, to, ooh, I kind of like you. And I go, where did that happen from?
See, it's interesting you say that. I think I agree that there were pacing issues. I think that that's partly because this book is intended to be a duology. Yes. So it's book 1 of 2.
Yeah.
I think it's also partly because she's also opted for a real slow burn.
Yes. Which
then means that by the time you get to the book, they only barely starting to tolerate each other.
Yeah, they've realized that they like have feelings for each other. It's like that switch happens right at the end.
Yeah, but I think for me, I did like how they shifted from dislike to tolerance. And I think I liked it quite a bit, because to me it felt like there was more to their attraction than just physical appearances.
Yeah.
What I think is quite interesting is that Aurienne, because she is a healer, or at least she's a scholar, I should be very clear. I think she really dislikes being called a healer.
Yeah.
Forgive me. She's a scholar of the medical profession. She is quite dispassionate about the human body. Meanwhile,
very clinical.
Yeah, very, very clinical in the way in which she describes different body parts. And that kind of shows in the way she describes him and his body.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, he's used to being, almost a bit of a sex pest.
Yeah.
And he uses his body to entice people. So he's really thrown by the fact that it doesn't resonate with her when she's looking at him. But meanwhile, it means that when Aurienne does eventually fall for Osric, it's because she's genuinely grappling with the duality of being able to be somebody who's capable of doing both good and evil.
Yeah.
And she's attracted to that selflessness side of him, that goodness side of him. And then has to hold space for he does bad things.
Yeah. No, and I can agree. I think that is actually a really
it's quite
nice
refreshing
way to
right?
do it. It is very refreshing. And this is probably then where maybe personally for me, I need those just a couple little more things peppered in, as well as it's the pacing, I think, which is really doing
it justice.
Yeah, because we kind of go, okay, they're working on the safe thing and they maybe have sort of worked out something with it, and then suddenly they stop doing everything to do with his safe, and then the whole like assassination thing happens and he gets hurt, and then he's, she's helping him recover at her family's house, and that sort of forces them together suddenly in multiple days together with the forced proximity there. where then all the things start bubbling and happening, and you're kind of like,
Correct.
it's all in one place, and now feels like we've forgotten about the rest of the plot just to do this.
Yeah, and that I will agree with you on. I think that I also found pacing to be a problem, less so in the concept of them very, very slowly starting to develop feelings for each other in a non, I guess, physically way. But I do agree with you that we lose momentum a lot in this book. And after a while, because it's such a slow burn, I think the interactions between the two characters start to feel very much the same. Like there's not a lot of growth, there's not a lot of progress. And you are correct. We go from only seeing each other for a couple of hours every month to spending a solid week and a half or 2 weeks together at Aurienne's family home. And suddenly there's this rush of feelings that they're starting to have towards each other.
Yeah. And then I know at the end of it, I personally felt like there wasn't enough resolved, whereas you felt like quite a bit was resolved.
Yeah. So I want to gently contest you on this idea that nothing was resolved. I remember you were saying to me that this book felt almost like it was a prologue. Rather than it was, anything more than that.
Like book 1 of 2,
And is it fair to say that you also probably found the ending to be quite abrupt?
I did, because the reason why I think this is because because I was listening to the audio and I knew I had like a certain amount of time. I went and walked the dog, and then I got back to the house, and I was like, where am I at? And I looked at like the minutes on it. I'm like, I've got like 10 minutes left, which usually half of that is for just ending out like the book and that, and had the glossary. And then suddenly it ended, and I went, wait. I don't.
What just happened?
It feels like if the movie's cut out halfway through the movie, and it didn't at least have a slightly nicer ending.
I liked the cliffhanger. I liked it quite a lot, and I think I would gently contest you on this idea that it was like a prologue, because if I look at a book, in my mind, it has to have some kind of complication, some kind of issue that we're trying to solve or resolve, whether that's, our attractions to somebody, or whether it's a mystery that we need to get to the bottom of. One way or another, we need to be able to tie this piece around in a neat bow. And that's what makes it a standalone book. And in my mind, I felt like there were a few things that we did start to resolve, right? We learned the primary mystery, which is, why is the pox happening? And why is it only affecting children? We also, we opened the book with Osric grappling with saith rot and whether or not it's curable. And we know at the end of the book that at the very least, the ancient fables and myths are able to slow the rate of degeneration. Which means there's something there that we need to explore further. And lastly, the third kind of, I guess, mystery point in the story that we learn about is who is commissioning the kills on the Haelan Order. So in my mind, I feel like we walked into the story with a set of questions that we didn't know the answers to. And we walked out with at least 2.5 of the answers.
And I think I will retract a little bit on like my stance on the prologue thing. And I think I do see it now as, I think my issue is the pacing. And I think that's what's really done it. Whereas, because you are right, there is enough for it. I think it's just the pacing that has caused it to be very abrupt for me. And again, could partially be to do with that I listened to an audio version and how it's like...
Whereas I had physical reminders of how close I was getting to the end. Which means I knew I was expecting this to be a cliffhanger.
And it could have even just been the inflection of like how the last bit was said, and it just is like, wait, everything's
just ended.
So I do agree with you that I do think it actually is a rounded story. I think my issue is with the pacing.
Yeah, very fair. Very fair. So once again, we've actually had a really great conversation, I think, today, because a lot of the topics have segued into others. I think this is a great time for us to segue into our rating segment, particularly because the very first criteria is about plot strength, right? Is the plot convincing, and is the payoff worth it? And given everything you've just said, Yelena, what do you think?
I'm very middle ground on it, because like originally I went, I don't think it is. Now that we've analyzed it, it's a little bit like it's very middle ground for me. So I give it a 3.5 out of 5, just because I still felt like it was lacking.
Interesting. I enjoyed it. Yes, I have issues with her writing style. There are a couple of personal icks that I'll talk about. For the first time, I've got some icks in our red flags segment. But despite the issues with her writing style, I still thought that she had an interesting premise.
Yep.
She had a unique world, and I liked the cliffhanger ending. So I'd give it a 4.
Yeah, fair. For our second category, we've got character design and development. So for people, are the characters lovable? Are they well defined? Do they grow and drive a plot along? Do we care what happens to them? What did you rate that?
So I think I would rate that a 2.5 because here's where I think the pacing issues begin to become a bit problematic for me. For a long, long time in this book, particularly Aurienne's character begins to feel a little bit two-dimensional. So she really does miss the lovable part and doesn't feel super well defined. And neither of those two characters really grow in any meaningful way. The plot is driven along, but largely because of events that happen to them.
Correct.
Rather than how they grow from those experiences.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I gave it a 2.5 as well. And this is where I go back to, I think we didn't get enough from other sources and other characters to help us like develop
show the growth of these
them.
ones.
Yes, correct. So I gave it a 2.5 as well.
So our third criteria is around themes, tropes, and plot devices. How are they used and are they used well? Yelena, over to you.
Yeah, well, I've already spoken about how I felt about the enemies to lovers and the slow burn. So I give this a 1 out of 5 because I know I really didn't find this did well at all for me with those because I still don't really see it that much as an enemies to lovers. I understand it's supposed to be. And I think it's just, again, the pacing doesn't work with the slow burn and it's a bunch of things that just tank this for me.
See, I'm a bit kinder here, I think.
Yeah.
Look, yes, the enemies to lovers was drawn out, but in the context of her wanting to make this a duology and the context of this being a slow burn, to me, that kind of makes sense. If anything, I would say her writing style lets her down here. You're absolutely right about the pacing issues. There's also too much assumed knowledge, which begins to really undercut the value of the two characters. Do they hate each other just because they're from different orders? Is there more to this?
Yep.
So to that end, I'd give her a 3.
Okay, cool. What about chemistry? So how do the characters interact with each other and sort of the world around them? Did we find the chemistry good?
This is where I think she really shone, right? I think, as I mentioned before, I think her writing style is excellent. She's got a lot of really witty banter that she uses. The characters are consistent in the way in which they interact with each other, including the Dayforce, for that matter. And more than that, they have such banter with each other as well, in the sense that they have so many intellectual quips. And I think I mentioned I really do like that there was more to their attraction than just physical appearances.
Yes.
She found his wit engaging. She found his nuance and his kindness confusing. And I loved all that because that's the reality, right? Like love is typically messy. It's not clean.
Yeah.
I'd give her a 4.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's a high rating. And I agree with it too, because I gave it a 4 as well, because those bits where we did the witty banter, fantastic. And I'm going to share like a couple of my favorite bits because these were memorable. You've got the survival instincts of a crumpet.
Cute.
Like, what a line.
Yeah,
like, again,
exquisite.
so
I've used that in real life now.
Yeah, yeah. And there was a moment where Osric saves Aurienne's life again and he kills someone with a fork. And she sees it and she's not happy about it. But she's like, how did he die? He fell on a fork due to fear. And she's like, well, fear of what? Well, fear of the fork. And he's been like stabbed multiple times with it.
Yeah.
And so there's just things there that I'm like, yeah, okay, I like this. So I gave it a 4 too.
They definitely had chemistry. You just could have seen more of it and it could have been paced better.
Exactly, exactly.
So if we tally all of that up, that actually takes us to a 3 out of 5, and that's without rounding. I know with some of our other books, we've either rounded up or rounded down.
Yeah, this is a clean 3 out of 5, which is a very good rating.
It's a decent mark.
And if I compare this to us doing Great Big Beautiful Life, where I read it at the time and went, it's fine, and then we rated it a 1.5. And then this one I went, I don't like it, and I thought we would rate it low, and it got a 3. I think it shows our rating system works.
If nothing else, I hope it shows that there's value in discussing a book.
Oh,
and
yes,
there's so much more. Yeah, there's so much more that we can get out of hearing the other person's perspective.
Yeah, definitely. But What about for our red flags? Because we like to give a red flag as a little bonus. Did you have any icks?
Look, for the first time, I know that I usually am pretty tolerant when it comes to books. I had a really big ick that I personally dislike a lot, and it's a writing ick. And for me, it's when you switch from one character's point of view to another.
Yeah.
Particularly when you are reading a book that's supposed to be set in a limited point of view. So either it's a first-person point of view, or it's a second-person point of view, or it's a third-person limited.
Yeah.
I didn't actually realize that there was a term for this, so I credit AI Overview for sending me down a rabbit hole of YouTube videos from people who are able to put a lot more rigor and clarity into my frustration. There's an author, his name is Brandon McNully, and he talks through how this concept actually manifests. It's got a name for it called head hopping.
Okay.
And he speaks to why that is so ineffective in a lot of books. For me, I've just picked a passage out of random. If you look at page 100, there's an interaction happening between Osric and the head of his order. Her name is Triste. And she is interrogating him for missing an important event that the order had been having that night.
Yeah.
And he knew that he couldn't tell her the truth about why he missed that event, because it would mean admitting to the fact that he had spent the evening with Aurienne, a Haelan. So while we have this nervousness that Osric is feeling, we are immediately pulled out of his fear and tension and nervousness that he's going to be found out with a particular sentence that goes like this: Osric rarely displeased Tristane. She therefore compartmentalized her annoyance and did not further probe his ill-timed testicular massages. I dislike that we jump out of Osric's perspective in that situation to Tristane's, because it robs the mystery and the tension that we would have otherwise had.
Yeah.
And as a consequence, we now know that there are going to be no consequences in this book for Osric missing this event, and that Tristane is no longer suspicious of him.
Yeah.
And I just feel like there are a lot of easier ways or alternative ways that we could have written this without having to resort to jumping to her thoughts. Maybe her shoulders relax. Maybe her brows are furrowed and they kind of loosen slightly.
The show not tell sort of situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I just felt like there were too much head hopping that happened in this book, and it removed me from that sense of immersion that I would otherwise have.
Yeah.
What about you? Any icks?
There weren't many. There was just a couple lines, and I'll tell you what they are. So his cleft chin clefted majestically was a really weird line near the beginning of the book, and I went, what the hell does that mean? And his pecs popped manfully. There were just a couple ones where I'm like, okay, look, I get the sense of humor, but they're just a little bit too crude and weird. And those were really my only icks, as there was a few.
Oh, can I actually say one more ick?
Sure.
I lied. I have one more.
Yeah.
I think I found it a bit tricky to navigate this book because we don't really get a good sense of the setting of the book and what's happening.
Yep.
So as a consequence of that, we have quite a few anachronisms. At the start of the book, and oftentimes during the book, it seems like we're almost in a medieval style world.
Yes.
We have robes. There's no cars or modern technology.
Yeah.
We're using magic.
Yep.
And then at one point in the book, we have characters who are wearing short skirts with "Make It Bounce" written on the back with heart-shaped nipple pasties.
Yeah.
It just feels like, again, I was pulled out of the immersion of the book.
Yes. Yeah, no, I get that, because I did think Aurienne's original attire was very much
medieval.
Yeah. And you're correct to go there and you're like, oh, we're at a bar and this is happening. All right.
Correct.
Sure.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for joining us for this Red Flags review of The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy by Brigitte Knightley. If you made it all the way to the end of this episode, which went way longer than we thought it would, because we thought this would be the short one, we very much thank you and thank you for your support, and we hope you've loved it. And if you've got a book you'd like us to tackle next, or if you've got your own thoughts on this book, drop us a comment. We'd love to hear from you. You can find Red Flags wherever you listen to podcasts and follow us on TikTok and Instagram, even YouTube Shorts at Red Flags. That is red as in READ flags. See you next time.
See you next time.